Casino gambling, a good bet for New Hampshire or a ticket to big headaches? We'll bring you the debate. Hello, I'm Allison McNair. Welcome to New Hampshire Outlook. Coming up a bit later, we'll look into the debate over expanded gambling and casinos in New Hampshire. In January, debates begin in Concord on several pieces of gambling legislation. Under consideration are bills for a state-owned casino and the placement of video slot machines at racetracks and 8 other state-controlled facilities. So how are some people feeling about expanded gambling in New Hampshire? We took to the streets of Manchester to find out.
I think the costs that gambling basically incur to the community at large far outweigh any sort of revenue. It's kind of like what we have with liquor right now, the same sort of thing. I mean, we make a lot of money from liquor, but all the things that it does, that it costs in social services and families that get broken up, 98% of the people in Valley Street Jail were probably on some form of drug or alcohol, so it doesn't really work.
Gambling becomes addictive like a lot of other things. I know myself, I'm a recovering alcoholic drug addict, so for me, myself, I know I get addicted to the gambling as well.
No, I'm not really pro-gambling myself, but that's besides the point. Anybody else who is into it.
But if money were earmarked for education?
I'll support it 100%. I work in the business of human services, so I'll definitely support it.
I have family that gambles, and they don't do it that much. They do it responsibly, and it's fine.
So you don't think it'd be a problem here?
No, not at all.
The fact that people do leave the state of New Hampshire to go to Massachusetts, to Foxwoods to gamble, they might as well stay in this state and help the economy here with the concentration on funding for gambling, for funding for education.
A couple of weeks ago, New Hampshire Public Television brought together a group to talk about the future of expanded gambling in the state. Here's a portion of what was said. They came from Delaware and Connecticut. There were representatives from around the Granite State. Some were here as gambling proponents.
We were the first state in the United States to initiate a lottery.
Others came to voice their concerns.
But in the gambling industry, the place you've got to spend your money is on influencing politics.
The meeting, organized by the New Hampshire Travel Council, was designed to provide objective dialogue on the possible impacts of expanded gambling in New Hampshire. It was presented before an audience at the Mount Washington Hotel.
I think you raised some interesting questions. Let me offer the
Bob Bird is a lobbyist from Delaware, where gamblers have video slots at 3 racetracks. They generate $200 million of state revenue every year. Lou D'Alessandro is a New Hampshire state senator who's proposing legalizing video slots at New Hampshire's 4 racetracks. From the Connecticut Economic Resource Center is Jeff Blodgett. There, they have a state lottery, gambling at racetracks, and high-life venues, as well as 2 world-class casinos. Robert Danderson is the mayor of Berlin. He'd like to see a state-sponsored casino there to spur the local economy. State Representative Chris Reed is an opponent of expanded gambling, as is Senator Clifton B. Lowe. John Kindt has studied the impacts of gambling nationally. He's a professor of economics at the University of Illinois. Currently in New Hampshire, there are several pieces of gambling legislation that will be discussed in January. A recent plan proposed by Senator D'Alessandro would have placed nearly 5,000 video slot machines at New Hampshire's 4 racetracks and 2 grand hotels.
That piece of legislation passed the Senate with 13 votes. It was rejected by the House. It would seem to me that that piece of legislation, with some changes, will be a piece of legislation that will move forward.
This is bad economic development policy. That's the first reason I oppose it. It's bad because it cannibalizes other businesses. Most households only have so much disposable income, and they spend part of that for recreation and entertainment. The gambling industry and the revenues that would accrue to the owners comes from that discretionary income, and it's taken away from other businesses, from restaurant, for other entertainment. And it increases the amount of money that's going in that direction in New Hampshire because how much people gamble is a function of proximity. Video slots in particular are a particularly pernicious form of gambling. They are highly addictive, often called the crack cocaine of gambling, because they are designed to systematically fleece people of their money. The more you play, the more money you lose. And the more money that people lose, they start chasing their losses, just as is being proposed that the state of New Hampshire does. Because we're losing the revenue from the racetracks, the suggestion is we expand lobbying to make up for that. So this is a real problem in terms of where do we want to invest our resources in a productive activity that promotes a work ethic or an activity that drains household income and promotes addiction.
For many New Hampshire residents, gambling is a short bus ride away. Connecticut is home to Mohegan Sun and Foxwoods casinos. The state revenues from those two facilities are $320 million.
You know, we've painted a rosy picture of Connecticut, and frankly, Connecticut is one of the examples where it's worked the best, but we haven't talked about the problems, and we've talked to some of the people from around the casinos in Connecticut, and they've said this: we now have 25,000 cars going down our main drag in small little pretty town like you'd find in New Hampshire. Those 25,000 cars go by our restaurants, by our businesses. They don't stop. Our restaurants on that drag are going out of business. These cars are going to the casinos. That money is going to the casino promoters, not to that area's economy. On the other hand, the towns around the casino have to pay for the DWI arrests, the snow plowing, the narcotics arrests, the social costs there. Embezzlement goes up. These are costs to the people around the dog track. So what you're doing is you're having people in towns and in New Hampshire, if you put in gambling casinos, we're basically taking money out of pockets of people who gamble, but also out of the pockets of people who choose not to gamble. And we're putting that money in a truck and sending it off to the promoters in New York and Florida and Chicago. And that has a significant cost. What happened in the area around the casino in Connecticut is that property values, the assessments, went down. So now you're talking about your taxes going up to pay for the gambling interests' profits.
Mayor Anderson, we've got Coos County, largest employer. People are not working now. The mills are closed.
We have 860 employees out of work right now.
You hear the sound of 20,000 cars, and if they're all heading up to Berlin...
We'd be giving chairs.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about what you're hoping will happen.
What I looked at is how other communities in that same situation handled that. And many, if you look in Mississippi, if you look in, Wisconsin, if you, in the Ohio Valley, did, in fact, create casinos and had very good luck with them. And what we're looking for in Berlin is we have the Great North Woods, okay? And what we have right now is we have a lot of hikers. We can't survive on selling hikers brown bag lunches. We have a lot of snowmobilers, which I'm very thankful for, but we're not going to survive on just selling them gasoline. What we need is to create a destination that would attract people to come to Berlin. We have over 60,000 skiers here on any given weekend. What we would be offering is some extra nightlife for the people in this area, give them another reason to come to New Hampshire to ski. Because I think if you look at the trends, New Hampshire skiing industry has actually kind of leveled off and has had some problems. This will be another ticket for them to attract people to come to New Hampshire as a whole, and we have to be very proactive in attracting other industries, and I think gaming is one that's been very steady. If you look with September 11th, what has happened in Foxwoods and Mohegan Sun, they have actually increased their capacity by 10% in this last month. And what is happening, and this is one of the positive sides about locating a casino in Berlin, is that it isn't a day trip. It would be more, in the urban system study, it would be a destination.
We have to find ways to help Berlin that creates jobs that are stable, that creates jobs that will get people to move up there and contribute to the economy. What we don't need to do is put something in Berlin that's going to be taking money away from the businesses that are there, that are further impacting. You know, there are people up there who own businesses now, there are people who are working. Do they want to give up their business and go work for a casino so that the money can go to New York and Chicago and Florida? I don't think so. I think we have to find other solutions that really honor the hardworking tradition, the New Hampshire tradition, this great surrounding area of Berlin, and not dishonor it by putting something in that isn't going to help and that's going to have a devastating impact on the surrounding businesses.
Connecticut has had some positive economic experiences, both in terms of jobs. We have 16,000 to 18,000 jobs, primarily in eastern Connecticut, which is a rural, more impoverished area of the state than the rest of the state. And so we've had some success there. There have been cases as well, well-documented cases of embezzlement. I have a dozen news articles with me of people being arrested for embezzlement. Town officials, state government officials, and local employers, people working for local employers. And there are other social costs that have been documented in Connecticut as well. Having said that, I mean, on the positive side of the Connecticut experience, to the extent that we are drawing in out-of-state money, we're using other people's money to bolster Connecticut, that argues in our favor. Somewhere between 50 and 70% of the revenues come from others outside the state. And if you don't mind a beggar thy neighbor policy, it works for us. Does it work for the nation at large? I'm not sure. But I think, too, the thing to think about in New Hampshire is, how much more gambling can the economy absorb? I mean, we have, millions and millions of square feet of casinos now in Connecticut, the largest casino in the world. And so that's a major destination. I don't know whether you're going to be able to develop that type of attractiveness and draw in northern New Hampshire, just given your lack of access to travel, airports, and so forth.
But what we think in New Hampshire is that the southern area, which has excellent access and egress, would be a wonderful destination. It has been in the past. People have come in the past to visit our tracks. And in placing the video at these tracks, we believe very strongly that the enhancement will warrant the trip.
Let me address the issue of the jobs. A new study out of Australia, and I think this is a good way to sort of pinpoint it, indicates that as this money is coming out of the economy, there's no doubt that there are millions of dollars going into these places. Where is it coming from? Money doesn't grow on trees. It's coming out of the pre-existing economy. It's coming out of your cars, your refrigerators, your computers, your positive multiplier effect. It's coming out of a very good multiplier effect and going into something which might even be a negative multiplier effect, according to a Ford Foundation report. So you're really hurting the economy with this. But for every 3 machines, you lose 2 jobs out of the economy, according to this Australia study. Now, that's in the feeder market. You got to back away from the flash. And with regard to the drive-by business, the leading-edge drive-by business report was done by Professor William Thompson and Ricardo Gazelle, who's now, I believe, last I heard, was with the Federal Reserve Board. And they indicated that the drive-by business is only about 10%. Gamblers go to gamble. It's a marketing to an addicted and potentially addicted market.
We set aside the money because we understand that, as I said, there's a downside to everything. But I think that's progressive thinking on our part in order to help people. But the fact of the matter is, we are trying to protect New Hampshire. We're trying to do more for New Hampshire in terms of keeping things that were good to New Hampshire alive and well, and this is a way to do it. Now, I have a tremendous amount of antipathy for these people who say, we're going to make people rich. Well, isn't that all about America? Aren't people in business to make money? Are we not going to buy Fords because we're going to make Ford Motor Company rich? Are we not going to buy General Motors vehicles because we do something to enhance General Motors? These people made an investment in New Hampshire. In 1933, they put up a racetrack at Rockingham Park. Don't they deserve a return on investment? They're provided jobs. They pay taxes. They pay real estate taxes, business enterprise tax, business profits tax, room and meals tax. Doesn't this world say that if you're willing to take a risk, you ought to get the reward?
One sec before you respond. Let's get another audience question, and then Professor will go to you next. And although many people probably know you, sir, if you can give us your name.
Thank you very much. I'm a state senator. The name is Jack Barnes. And I'm one of those senators who is undecided on which way to go when this comes to a vote. If the state of New Hampshire puts them into the 4 tracks and the 3 grand hotels, our brothers and sisters in the state of Massachusetts aren't going to sit there idly by and have us suck the money out of the state of Massachusetts to come up here and gamble. So that's why I guess I was trying to look to see what kind of an impact it would have, because I have a real concern that if we open up with, Lou, what would you say, 1,200 machines down at Rockingham, perhaps?
Right, yes.
So will we need 2,400 machines there if Massachusetts opens up to keep in?
Senator Barnes, I'm going to throw it to Bob again just for 1 second, and that's because, Bob, you've been looking at that issue.
We've done a number of studies in Delaware, exactly along the issue you're asking, because we anticipate that either Maryland or Pennsylvania will do some kind of gambling in the near future. Just because of where it is in the political process and how long it takes once you've passed the legislation, we think it will take at least 3 to 5 years before we face competition. But we know that when that comes, we will lose 15 to 20% of our business. That's where we are.
All right, I want to just switch gears here for a second, and the issue of education funding, which we hear time and time again. And Bob, I want to ask you, because as far as where revenues are earmarked from gaming, does it go to funding education in Delaware, or is it not the general fund, and why has it gone that route?
We are a very strong general fund state. We have very few revenues that are dedicated to anything. Everything goes in and is then appropriated by the legislature. There was a lot of discussion about whether or not to earmark the dollars to go someplace, and the decision was made not. The money goes to the general fund. One of the reasons is if you earmark it to whatever cause you earmark it to, you do that to pick up some votes, I would assume, in the negotiation process, Senator.
I would think so.
What we decided and what we looked at, though, was that could be a potential problem, because if your gambling revenues go down, then you could have a source out there that really needs revenues, and it's a good thing and all that. Then you got to look for revenues someplace else. So we decided not to go the earmarking route.
One thing you find empirically is that when you put in legalized gambling, other forms of gambling also increase because you have more gambling addicts. And so not only will they go to the casino, but they will start trying to find other opportunities for gambling. So you're not going to decrease the illegal gambling and the other forms of gambling by bringing in casinos. You're just going to increase gambling across the board.
Senator Below, you wanted to?
Sure. And a key question is, do we want the state of New Hampshire to be in the business of promoting and profiting from exploiting people's weaknesses? The fact is that from video slots in particular, a disproportionate amount of the revenue comes from people who end up addicted with a problem or a pathological problem with gambling.
You have to look across the 12-mile Delaware lines. You have to look at the feeder market. You have to see what's going on in that area, and crime is definitely going up. A recent study by Professor Grinnells indicated before and after in every county that had brought in this type of gambling and casino gambling, the crime rate had gone up. Not in the first year, the second year, but in the third year it went up 10% and tracked up after that. And people, taxpayers, have to pay for that. Your property taxes will go up since you don't have sales tax or income tax here. And the bottom line, this is just basic economics. I brought one news article here from Nebraska. The headline speaks for itself. This is back in 1996. It says 40 economists, including a bunch of professors, side against more gambling. 40 economists pan expanded gambling. This is basic economic principle. Paul Samuelson, many of you who have had Economics 101, will find that he says this is a sterile transfer of wealth, and in his most recent book, Nobel Prize winner, indicates that all these negatives overwhelm the benefits.
I would make the suggestion to you, at least this is what we found in Delaware, and I would think that New Hampshire is about the same. There's a lot of gambling going on here right now. You've got lottery, you've got scratch-off lottery. If you're like Delaware, we have a fair number of churches who run bingo and casino nights. We have a good portion of the volunteer fire companies in Delaware have been paid for years by bingo and casino nights. So you've got lots of gambling going on already. As far as the New Hampshire citizenry is concerned, I would suggest to you that my guess is there are a lot of them who are already going to Rhode Island, who are already going to Foxwoods. My point is, gambling is a part of our society in this century. And it is more so in 2001 than it was in 1991, and more than it was in 1981. The decision you all have to make is whether or not you are going to capitalize and take advantage what are the obvious economic benefits when you do it. I'm not going to argue that there are not downsides to it. There are downsides to it. There's downsides to a lot of things the government does, and the government has to figure out a way to deal with those problems. We think it's been very positive in Delaware, but you all have to make that decision. But don't delude yourself and don't kid yourself by thinking that if you don't do this, you're going to stop gambling, because you're not.